Oh, what's up, Katie?
Hi.
Are you paying attention, Katie?
Yeah.
So have you heard of Ruth Bader Ginsburg before? Have you heard of Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Uh,
Have you heard of this
I'm
woman?
not sure.
What's that?
Maybe.
So Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a Supreme Court justice. Maybe you heard of her.
Yeah.
Okay, she's known as a liberal Supreme Court justice. And then have you ever heard of Terry versus Ohio? Have you ever heard of this one right here?
I think I have heard that.
So Terry versus Ohio is the linchpin of death and the prison state and police state that we live in the United States of America. So there's Terry versus Ohio right there. And then if you take a look, see if you take a stick, and I'll put a stick on the wall for you so you can see it yourself. That line right there is the prison complex. That's the industrial prison complex. And then here's Terry versus Ohio right here. So here's Terry versus Ohio right here. See that line go down, and you see the prison system?
Yeah.
Look, see that wave right there? You see that arc? That's caused from Terry versus Ohio. Do you see it? Here's Terry right here in 1968. The prison system in 1968 is 300,000 people. And now today, what we're looking at is over 2.5 million people. 2.5 million people in prison. Do you see that? 2.5 million people. Is that here's Terry versus Ohio. And then look down that stick, and that's the year of is 1968, all the way ubiquitously down the timeline. So there's an XY axis. The X is the years, and then moving forward is the Y. So this is in 1968 when Terry v. Ohio passes. And then right here, this is when the prison system takes off like a rocket. When you see the police kill somebody, it's legal. It's perfectly legal. It's because of Terry versus Ohio that puts officer safety over your civil liberties. When they put officer safety over the top of your rights, that's when we lost all of our rights, Katie. That's when we lost all of our rights. You see how that works?
Yeah.
Because there's the prison system right there. Look how low it is. So did people become more criminal, do you think, after 1968? Or do you think that the government passed laws to arrest people? This is Terry versus Ohio. And then right here, the prison population is at 300,000 people. And then Richard Nixon declares war on drugs. And then Ronald Reagan creates the for-profit prison industry. And see, the prison industry, it goes up dramatically from 300,000 up to over 400,000 to 500,000. We doubled the prison industry in Nixon's administration alone. Doubled the amount of people go and live in a dungeon. So the question I asked you was, in 1968, when the prison industry starts to take off like a rocket, did people in America become more criminal, or did the government pass legislation that made laws that make people criminals?
What would the laws be? I'm sorry, I'm wrong.
The war on drugs. And also this right now here, this Terry v. Ohio, what this allows police to do is to walk up and grab you based on their suspicion. Do you know why that was passed in 1968? See the year right here, 1968? Why do you think they passed where cops could grab you in 1968? Let me give you a clue real quick. Here's a clue. Why do you think they did that? Why do you think in 1968 they made it so that cops could run up and grab you? Let me give you a little bigger clue here. Okay, does that help you understand why they wanted?
Because of people.
Right, they did it because they didn't want the civil rights movement to move forward. They wanted the civil rights movement to fail. That's the whole point. Do you see what I'm saying? This is the whole point. See, this is what happened right here. And so when they killed Martin Luther King Jr., that was the final straw. That was the final straw. That was the end of the civil rights era when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. From there, after this happens in April of 1968, and then June 6th of 1968, Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and then on June 10th of 1968, the Supreme Court, an unelected body, passed Terry v. Ohio that puts officer safety over your rights. Do you see that? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So what rights do you have, Katie? What are your rights? Do you know your First Amendment rights?
Well, you have freedom of speech. You have...
Good.
Yeah.
What else you got? What other rights do you have? I'm going to come back here for you.
I know you have, I know you have the right to bear arms. I don't know the other ones. I can't remember. But I know some of them.
So you have a Second Amendment right? And then, so just so you know, down the line here, your First Amendment is going to be based on liberty, your right to speech, your right to press, your right to assemble, petition. right to freedom of religion. And then your Second Amendment right, you know what that is, right? Your right to bear arms. Your right to bear arms. And then your Third Amendment right is the right not to house troops. It's not up here because it doesn't affect our civil liberties. And then your Fourth Amendment right is the right to be free in your person, houses, papers, and effects. Have you heard of that before? Have you heard of the Fourth Amendment before?
Yeah.
So the Fourth Amendment's going to be right down here. You see where it says the Fourth Amendment? Because what Terry v. Ohio does is it takes away your Fourth Amendment. So if I just slide this down, it says the Fourth Amendment is the right of the people. So who's the Fourth Amendment belong to? It belongs to the people. To be secure in their persons. To be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. So you know what that means? It means you don't have to be feared. So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a real easy question. If a cop pulls in behind you, does your stomach go through your throat?
I mean, sometimes, but that's just because, like, you're like, oh crap, I did something wrong. I mean, that's because, like, you sped or something.
Oh, so is that why police pull people over? Because you did something wrong?
Because, like, you speed, you're going against the law.
So you...
The speeding.
Okay, so you think you've done something wrong if the police are pulling you over? Is that what happens to you? How many times have you been pulled over?
I mean, not necessarily, because it has happened before. Like, if your light's out, they're trying to protect you because, like, safety hazards, too. I mean...
Oh, you think they pull you over to protect you for your lights being off, or you think they're pulling over to try to give you a DWI?
I mean, no. I mean, honestly, like, I have family that's cops and stuff, and I know that the reasons aren't all, like, bad things. I know that a lot of the time that, I mean, and that's their job. I mean, and...
What's their job? To take people to the dungeon? To take people to the prison system? That's their job?
Not necessarily.
But
they do it to protect you because let's say you are drinking and driving, you could hurt someone else.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it that way.
Okay. So
and that's your personal choice. So like if you are drinking and driving or something, and you put like someone else's, like you put your own locking on it and someone else's, I hope someone pulls you over because like you shouldn't be doing stuff like that, because that can hurt more people than just you.
What if you just happened to forgot to put your lights on? What if you just didn't put your lights on? So then you get pulled over by the police, and what's their job then? Well, after they realize you're not drinking, what is their job? Does their job end?
They tell you to turn your lights on, and then they say you can drive away.
Oh, is that what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah? How many times have you been pulled over, Katie?
I've never been pulled over, but I've been with someone who's been pulled over.
You've never been pulled over?
I haven't, no.
And you drive a car?
I've been with someone, yes, but I've been with someone who has.
Uh-huh. And how'd that go?
It went well. He was really nice about it.
The cop was really nice about it?
He just said he didn't want us to get hurt.
Okay, so let's just say, though, you don't have your lights on and you get pulled over, and the cop pulls up and he says you've been drinking. You say, no, I have not been drinking, even though you shouldn't answer any questions. But then you have not been drinking. Does his job end right there and he lets you go? Does his job end?
Yeah.
Is that what happens?
I mean, if you can tell if someone's...
Okay, but I'm just saying, you can tell? How can you tell?
Like, by looking at their eyes, and you can tell by the way they're talking.
Okay, perfect. So what she just said, you guys, is the definition of Terry versus Ohio. She just said it. She just nailed it. She's exactly correct. If the cop believes that you're drinking, then you're drinking. That's what Terry v. Ohio does.
No, I'm not saying that then you're drinking. I said that you can tell if someone could possibly be, and then they'll eventually do a test on you.
You're actually correct. You are correct. All it takes, because of Terry versus Ohio, is the cop to believe that you've been drinking, even if you haven't been. You can take a breathalyzer, and if he still believes you've been drinking, then you can still be arrested for DUI. Did you know that? Did you know that?
You can still be arrested?
Yes.
No, because they have to do a test on you. They have to do a breathalyzer test and all that.
Let me say it to you again, Katie. You're super cute. I just adore you. But let me just tell you the truth. If the cop is reasonably suspicious that you've been drinking, and you do not, and you take a breathalyzer and it blows 0, you can still be arrested for DUI. Did you know that? In your head, you can't compute that, can you? you literally are going, that's just not true, aren't you? In your head, I mean, just to be honest. And I don't mind, you can say it. In your mind, you're saying if I blew on the straw and it blew 0-0, that he has to let me go. Is that correct? If she has to face the fact that the people who are law enforcement are her family and that they arrest people based on their suspicion, based on Terry versus Ohio, she has to get off the phone. She can't take that question because the truth is my friend Sean Antonio was in a car accident. The other guy was on methamphetamines. They thought he was drunk driving. They breathalyzed him. He passed it. He was black. They arrested him for manslaughter. He was sober.
Point being, they say we have to do a breathalyzer test. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm again dead sober. I'm down, but my breathing is labored because it's cold and I'm it's all that shit. So whatever, this is what it is. Breathalyzer comes, I blow, and they're like, it's like not working or some shit. So they're like, oh well, we gotta get a new machine. I'm like, okay, so I wait. And I'm like, oh, we have to go back to the station. And I'm like, no, we'll make this one work, right? So I didn't know this stuff about breathalyzers. So they try it again. I blow. And dude, clearly, and this is where it goes a little bit legal. Clearly, it wasn't working because what I found out later is that breathalyzers don't work in 39 degrees or lower, and if they're not calibrated before the last use, they can actually misdiagnose the person that's blowing then. The person that blew before, it could show up to be their thing. So an improperly uncalibrated breathalyzer will not show the proper results. So they couldn't figure it out. Long story short, I'm clear I blew zeros. I'm clear, right? Point being is that they go, they pause. You see these officers stop, they pause, they look at each other, and they kind of go, fuck, you could see them trying to figure out what's going on. They turn to me and go, Mr. Antonio, we're going to have to take you under arrest under suspicion of a DUI. So I took the plea deal. Plea deal put me in jail for 100. The deal was 125 days. So it was half, 9 months, half is 125 days. So I went to jail I was in jail until, I was there for 4 months. There's 1 week shy of 4 months. And guys, I got moved 5 times. There was some gnarly shit. They're talking about the butt cheek spread thing. I had 5 times, 6 times. Gang wars broke out, riots broke out, people were stabbed. I mean, I was thrown in the hole at one point. All types of crazy shit happened. And I'm like, so I'm so grateful I survived that because it fucked me up for a bit. I came out a different human. I was not okay.
Number 67, John W. Terry et al., Petitioners versus Ohio.
So this is everything you need to know about Terry versus Ohio. We are going to go over what the case is.
The facts in this case are these. This incident occurred at 2:30 in the afternoon, broad daylight in the downtown section of Cleveland, Ohio. The police officer in this case, one Martin McFadden, noticed 2 Negro males standing at the corner of 14th Street in the city of Cleveland, where Euclid Avenue and Huron Road intersect. These 2 streets, if the court pleased, form a triangle at the apex of East 14th Street. The police officer was approximately 100 feet away from where these 2 men were. He said, well, to tell you the truth, I didn't like them.
Didn't like them?
Yes.
So for this case to continue, for us to continue down the road of this case, you first have to buy that Martin McFadden was a super cop and he predicted a stick-up. We have to start from there to have a case at all whatsoever.
What kind of a neighborhood is that generally in Cleveland? A business neighborhood?
That is our downtown section, the busiest section of the city, Your Honor.
Downtown retail stores and offices and so on.
Yes, Your Honor. And the testimony of the police officer was that there was business as usual in the downtown center of the city. Stores were open. There were pedestrians on the street. The police officers stated that he positioned himself in the doorway of a department store by the name of Rogoff. For a period of 10 to 12 minutes, he observed these two males at the corner. Alternately, each made 5 or 6 trips over to 2 stores located on Huron Road. He said that he didn't know whether it was the United Airlines store or the Diamond store.
We're going to go over the battle between Reuben Payne and Louis Stokes, and really Reuben Payne just lays a shellacking on Louis Stokes, and Louis Stokes lays a great big goose egg.
Oh my God.
That was a whiff.
That was a whiff.
In the arguments for Terry.
They were standing on the corner conversing. Then, because of their not continuing in the flow of regular commerce, he observed one of the petitioners walk away from the other one and proceed approximately 100 feet west up the street.
Alternately, each made 5 or 6 trips over to 2 stores located on Huron Road.
He noticed the unusual activity of this petitioner peering in the jewelry store or the airline office there. That was something in the vicinity of the airline office or the jewelry store which excited the petitioner's attention in some manner or in some way.
When you listen to the Terry v. Ohio oral arguments, raw dog, just straight, they're only 1 hour, you'll hear that the number of times that Terry, Katz, and Chilton went over and looked in that Diamond store window, it exaggerates constantly throughout the entire trial. Of course, Louis Stokes never pushes back on this, and the only time it's ever mentioned is when Thurgood Marshall mentions it later in the trial.
He then returned to his companion on the corner, had a conversation with his companion. His companion in turn alternately proceeded up the street and conducted himself in the very same manner, that they alternated in this way 4 or 5 times, that thereupon a third man came from across the street and had a conversation with them. After having a conversation with them, that the third man returned back across the street and stationed himself there, that these individuals then engaged in the conduct which I have described previously, 4 or 5 additional trips after that. Making the total number of trips, they then went across the street. The 3 men came together, at which time they were having a conversation, at which time the officer had concluded that they were casing the establishment for a stick-up.
I don't care if they went back and forth 4 times or 50 times or 100 times. We have the right to assemble in the United States of America. We have the right to assemble. The Colfax Massacre was based on black people assembling. Most of the 1967 massacres were based on black people assembling.
The police officer then says, I then went over to the 3 men. I said to them, I'm a police officer. What are your names? In the first instance, he said, they gave it to me quick. In all other places in the record, he says, they mumbled something. He said, at this, I then reached and got Terry. I spun him around, holding him in front of me. I then began to pat him down. He says, I felt inside of his top coat what felt to be the handle of a gun.
The cop testified, I didn't like him, so he ran over and grabbed him. That's against your 4th Amendment right. That's why Terry v. Ohio is the most liberty-stripping.
So you better watch your goddamn mouth, boy!
That affects us the most. The exact same thing that happened to John Terry, that Martin McFadden did to John Terry, can now happen to you. A cop can look at you and be suspicious of you, and it's always probable cause.
This officer testified further, though, that he felt that they might be casing the place for a stick-up. Then the court then inquired of him specifically if he had ever, and by the way, this police officer had been a police officer for 39 years and a detective for 35 years.
What did they say? They said Martin McFadden had been a cop for 39 years. And they do this big emphasis on it. And so let's go back. He stops John Terry in 1963. So we can go back to 1923 is when Martin McFadden started being a cop, 1924. So what was going on in 1923, 1924? Prohibition. Before Brown versus Board of Education, police were the lynchmen. If you broke the black codes, police were the lynchmen in America.
If the people, the public, would let the police force handle the situation, I believe the integration would not be omitted.
Black people in America aren't even free. So Martin McFadden and all the Supreme Court personnel, they're still being influenced by the Jim Crow Act. So these guys are raised, look at the years they're born. These guys are raised watching that Jim Crow Act that believe that black people are feeble-minded. So Martin McFadden starts being a cop in 1930, and then in 1954, black people are free. And 9 years later, McFadden sees John Terry, says he didn't like how they look. Well, there's no shocker to that. That's not a surprise.
The court specifically asked him if he had, during his 39 years as a police officer, ever previously observed anyone casing a place. He said no, he had not. Asked if he had ever arrested anyone for casing a place. In his 39 years, he said that he had not.
He helps make the case for the state.
I then reached inside the coat and tried to remove the gun. I could not remove the gun. I therefore took the entire coat off of him and then took the gun out of the coat. At this point, he says, I ordered the three of them into the store. As I walked through the doorway, I said to the store personnel, order the wagon. He later explained that ordering the wagon means you are then under arrest.
Just because a cop is suspicious of you doesn't give him the right to walk over and grab you. There's no probable cause. If you understand the Bill of Rights as written, this case should be thrown out right here.
Once inside the store, the three men were ordered up against the wall, whereupon he then searched Chilton. Inside of Chilton's top coat, he also found a loaded revolver. He searched the third male Katz, upon whom he found nothing. He then caused these men to be removed from the haberdashery to Cleveland's police station. When they arrived at the police station, they were then booked for investigation. Sometime late the next day, after having been interrogated the following morning, these men were then charged officially late the second day with carrying concealed weapons. The police officer testified further, reference to questions propounded to him having to bear on the question of probable cause. We asked him, did you know any of these men? No. Had you ever seen any of these men previously? No. Had anyone given you any information regarding them? No. He was then asked what had attracted his attention to them. He said, well, to tell you the truth, I didn't like them.
Looking at someone and saying, I don't like the way you look. What was the attitude and the sentiment of white people in the cities in the early 1960s in America?
I don't like it.
Why not?
Well, I just don't think it's right. If any people in Mississippi are ready for that, then they'll say they are.
You agree in this?
I think that we were better off before it started.
Well, I think they should have stayed where they was at and just trying to stir up trouble. That's all it is. They should have stayed where they belong.
Well, I don't think none of us like it. I mean, I just think we ought to have open season on all of them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's not going to last too long before the people down here get a little antagonized with it, and they're going to take it into their own hands.
Up to the point where he spun Terry around. Had he done anything outside what a policeman might properly do?
No, he had done nothing outside of what a policeman might ordinarily do.
Now, if then at that juncture he had reason to believe they might be armed, did he have to complete his questioning first, or could he frisk them?
I would say, under the circumstances presented to me, that he did not, under those circumstances, have the right to lay hands on this citizen. And
this would be because you do not think the record shows that he had any reason to believe they had weapons?
No, that he didn't have. I'm saying that the point that you lay your hands on the citizen and you begin to exercise dominion over that citizen on the streets by spinning him around, in order for you to do this, that you must have the probable cause that is required to place a person under arrest, because this person is substantially under your custody, your dominion.
And then you mean he can't frisk for weapons without probable cause to arrest? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Pay very close attention. This next part is where we all lose our liberty, where the Fourth Amendment is washed away. Pay very close attention. Say it with me and tell every person you ever know this. Reasonable suspicion is a construct of institutional racism. And the result, look at the prison system. Take a look. Take a look. Take a look. Take a look. What happens after Terry versus Ohio? You can be arrested or killed by the police, and as long as officer safety is paramount, it doesn't matter what happens to you. Look at the death structure created by Terry versus Ohio. That's where the Supreme Court did not respect our constitutional liberties, and they allowed police to investigate you based on suspicion. Take a look at what was going on in the 60s. 1954, black people are freed. 1954 to 1964, you have a very limited window to change history. If you do not change history in the very limited window that you have, you miss it. You miss it. And take a look again. I'm just going to go back and forth. That's why I'm carrying the camera. Cruikshank happens in 1876. So what does Cruikshank exactly say? Cruikshank says that your civil liberties can't be applied to you through the federal government. They literally rule that we cannot apply your civil liberties. Sorry. And the result is hundreds of thousands and millions of deaths for years and years for 100 years. Fast forward to Terry versus Ohio. What do they say? That a cop can be suspicious of you. And then they can investigate you and make you get on your knees and arrest you and detain you.